Hi, all. Welcome to Medical Terminology for Healthcare Professionals. This is your lecture over Chapter 1, Intro into Medical Terminology. And so today we'll go over some basics that will really set up the rest of the semester for this class and for what you're learning. So you've got some learning objectives listed there. You have access to these PowerPoints. And so really the main thing together from this chapter is the fundamentals of word structure that is going to be needed for this entire course. And so that's going to be looking at things like prefixes, root words, combining forms, and suffixes. And so prefixes are something that comes at the beginning of a word, can be groups of syllables or a single syllable or even sometimes just a letter, and they create a new word with the root word. And so the word root is really the base for what you're looking at. It is kind of the central theme, the central idea around whatever is being looked at is this root word. And it's kind of the base. Kind of think of the base of a building, and this is the base of that word. It's what everything else is referring to, whether that's a prefix, a suffix, or something like that. When we talk about combining forms, combining form is a word root which a vowel has been added to link to another word, so the suffix or the prefix. So typically it's something thought of like an O, and it's just there to link the two, allowing those words to kind of combine a little bit better than just putting the two words together. And so they may not have an actual meaning, but they're linked together. They help form that word. And then finally, you have suffixes, which come at the end of the word. They attach to the back of that. Again, can be a syllable, a group of syllables, sometimes even just a letter to form a word. And we can even occasionally take a suffix and a prefix and attach them directly to each other to come up with a word. And so really what you're going to be learning to do is learn what the suffixes are, the prefixes are, the root words are. And so in a medical world, and really in a world in general, you can start to break down the meaning of a word and what it actually means based on the parts of those. And so this course is going to get you very familiar with suffixes and prefixes and root words so that can occur. And so along with that, there are, you can look at lots of different common parts of words, you'll see things repeating over and over and over again, like anytime you see the word a at the beginning of a word, it usually means not. But there are other things that can mean not as well, and this can come back to it being Greek or Latin in origin. And so you have to be realizing that sometimes there are multiple things that mean the same thing, and so getting familiar with those as well as different words meaning different parts of the body or organs of the body as well can have that same kind of thing. And so hopefully as we practice, you'll start picking this up in everyday life of different words meaning different things. And you'll be able to break words down even if you don't have never seen it before and aren't familiar with it. You can have a general idea of what something is referring to. Along with this, spelling is something that will get you, as you're working in a medical field, you want to try to spell things as correct as you possibly can, even when it's new words or things you don't see very often. And this chapter and this entire book kind of helps with that because you get familiar with certain terms over and over and over again, and then you're just combining them with new root words to be able to spell. And your book goes over that and gives you a list of things with silent letters, so GN, having that, or knuckle, so a knuckle in your finger has that silent K. And so these are things you're going to want to look at as you move forward. Again, looking at even just silent letters, things to consider through your entire time in this course and beyond as you're looking in the medical field. It also lists things that have direct meaning, so just looking at all those different components of words, your book does a really good job. In your actual textbook, it gives you all kinds of prefixes and suffixes, gives you those what their meanings, which you're really going to want to get familiar with, and then also shows you that spelling, so you can start looking at those frequently misspelled words. Some you may struggle with, some you may not, but you're just starting to learn that. Like most people know a pretest comes before or in front of. And so getting familiar with all these is going to be very important. Right now, it might not be the easiest to connect all these, but as you move through this semester, you'll start connecting these with things you're a little bit more familiar with, and hopefully you can continue to remember those. Again, it continues to talk about spelling and just looking at those different things. You definitely want to become familiar with singular endings and plural endings and how those look a little bit different. Um, just keeping that in mind depending on what the word is in itself. And it continues on with that. And then it goes into use of abbreviations. There are various abbreviations that you'll become familiar with as you use them. Your book does this as well, so just kind of keep that in mind. And abbreviations can vary widely depending on where you're at, who you're working with, what you're kind of looking at. And pronunciations are always a good thing to look at. Thankfully now with Google, you can kind of Google words and they'll give you the pronunciation, but getting familiar with how things are actually pronounced is always good, especially if English is not your first language or you haven't been around medical terms very often for you to be able to pick up how things are supposed to be pronounced. And so your book does a good job and gives you exercises on how to pronounce those things. Finally, not as important in this chapter, but definitely something you're going to want to kind of familiarize yourself with is things like medical records and all the different things that go into that, and abbreviations like medical history and physical examinations and what these are. So a lot of definitions that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. Most of you can very easily read these things in your textbook or on your PowerPoint and be able to pick up what those are. You can always email me if you have questions on something specifically. And so it's just kind of going over those things, medical records, again, looking at a lot of those different terms. Definitely learn about HIPAA. If you don't in this course, you definitely will in another course. Go in depth on what HIPAA is. And again, just going into some of the different things you may see on chart notes. Again, this is meant for medical professionals, but even if you don't work in a medical field directly later in life, some of these things are good to know for your own health, and so just making sure you're looking at those. And with that, I think that pretty much covers our chapter. And it does give you some basic abbreviations used in your book and things you may see a lot of, things like DOB, meaning date of birth, CVA, so cerebrovascular accident, or CDC, Centers of Disease Control. So just looking at things like that. Do realize most things are going to come in the metric system, so you'll see things like kilograms, liters, micrograms, milligrams, more than you will see pounds, inches, that type of thing. So that kind of wraps up chapter 1, so start digging into that, and please let me know if you guys have any questions.